So then folks, let's talk about today's match at Barston. It's been a golden rod qualifier. Obviously the finals next year, big money up for grabs. I think 12 grand is up for the winner of that final, so really good money in feeder fishing. And the way these qualifiers work is that one angler from every 20 peg zone, the match is split into 3 zones, 60 anglers on the match, one angler from every 20 peg zone goes through to the final. You've got to win a 20 peg zone. Easier said than done, let me tell you. Now, my peg for today has been 27, a really good peg. The 20s and the teens a really good area in the summer months. But as you can tell, probably from the breath, but you can see my breath here in the shed, that it's not the summer, it's the winter. And the 20s haven't been great recently. Another disappointing aspect of the day is we're fishing against some really good pegs on the far side, so including peg 124. Now, peg 124, for those of you that don't know, is a really good peg at Barston. It's an end peg, you get loads of space, and it wins a lot of matches. And to make matters worse, there's been a really good feeder angler on there today, Chris Hill. He's a good angler, catches loads of fish at Barston. So when we drew our peg, we sort of thought we're up against it a little bit here. Now, company for today has been, on my right hand side, Jeff Ringer, on my left hand side, Jeff Lance. 2 Jeffs sandwiching me in the middle. So they're really good anglers. So hopefully between the 3 of us, if there was any fish in the area, we'd have known about it pretty soon. Tactics for me today have revolved around method feeder work, or hybrid feeder work, but I'll talk to you about my feeder choice in a second. For one reason, that's the way you're going to win your 20 peg zone. There's no point messing around trying to catch little tiny fish. There's an explosion of little tiny 4 to 6 ounce skimmers in Barston at the minute. Now, there's a million grebes on the lake as well. Maybe they're clearing up a few fish, I'm not too sure. Maybe they'll thin those skimmers out, but if they don't, the skimmer fishing in the future will be amazing. But at the minute, they're tiny. Not really worth fishing for. And if you fished a little open end feeder, traditional style, you're just going to get pestered by those little fish and you're just not going to put a weight together. So it's all about catching quality fish, big baits on method feeder or hybrid feeder. Now, for me, I've chose to use a little hybrid feeder, as I say. It's one of these little Guru babies. They're about the size of a 50p piece. I think nice amount of bait for this time of year. You're not trying to feed loads of bait. We're not trying to pull fish into the peg. We're just trying to catch one fish at a time. You know, it's pretty cold out there. So I've used a 30 gram little hybrid feeder, short stem, which I think is quite important. And then in the stem, I've changed the elastic to a pink midi shock core. The reason for that is because obviously with that short stem, if I was to use a heavy elastic, hardly any would come out. And what I want is for that feeder to be as far away from the hooked fish as possible when I'm playing it. So obviously that's where the light elastic comes in. And also this elastic, you know, tie nice knots in it, hardly ever breaks. So nice soft elastic in a short stem is my way of thinking. Now, bait preparation. I've used micro pellets in the feeder. And because it's quite cold at this time of year, you can get away with preparing your bait a little bit further in advance. And I think that works really well because it means that the pellets fluff up to their maximum size. So what I've done is yesterday, not night before, but yesterday, sort of like midday time, I've just given my micros a little bit of water. Not drown them in water, just a little bit of water. And I've done that just to sort of set them on the way of softening up. What I've found this morning is when I've opened my little EVA case, you know, you guys know how I prepare pellets. I'll put a link up there to show you how I prepare micro pellets. When I opened my little EVA case this morning, the pellets were soft to touch, but they weren't tacky at all. There was no stickiness to them, but they were really soft and they were swollen up to like the maximum size. I've used the Swim Stim Natural 2 mils, a beautiful pellet. And because we've been doing a lot of filming with like flavourings and things like that, if you've not seen any of those videos, obviously have a look at my channel. And if you've not subscribed, click the subscribe. That'd be a good idea. Been doing loads of stuff with flavourings. I've knocked the F1 pellets on the head just for today's match. And what I've done is I've used the Natural Swim Stim 2 mils, but added a load of the cool water stuff, the cool water... the cool water pellet soak. Obviously when we've been doing those videos, that pellet soak has been brilliant, so I'd be a fool not to use it. That way, by adding that pellet soak this morning, just bringing those pellets back round, it's added a little bit of stickiness, and it's just took those pellets a little bit softer, made them perfect for whacking that little hybrid feeder. Hook baits for today. The reason I've used a hybrid feeder is because I've got it in my head, I want to try a variety of baits. And the trouble with trying soft baits like bread maybe, or even like a soft expander, something like that, is that when you put them in a method feeder, I'm a little bit dubious whether you're crushing the bait and just ruining the presentation. So with a hybrid feeder, I can still use my normal wafters and hard pellets, but when I do want to switch to a soft bait, like a bit of bread maybe, a little couple of discs of bread, I can really carefully sort of like poke the pellets around it and then see what I'm doing, rather than it being in a mould and just sort of blindly squeezing it on. So I can just be a little bit more careful when I'm using softer baits. That's my reason behind using a hybrid feeder. Let me talk to you about how the match has gone. So, as I say, all about method feeder work, hybrid feeder work, and it's all been at distance today. No fish have been caught short, really. I've started my match at 50 metres. Now, the limit of my peg is maybe about 65 metres, maybe up to 70 metres is the middle of the lake. Everyone talks about Barston as massive chucks, but let me tell you, on 80% of the pegs, if you chuck 70 metres, you're in the bloke on the opposite side's peg. So you don't need that ridiculously heavy gear that everyone keeps talking about, and it shouldn't phase, a lot of you. So my peg limit is about 70 metres maximum. I've started at 50 metres. That gives me plenty of room to go throughout the day. First cast at 50 metres. I've sat there, I thought I'd give it a 10-minute chuck, just talking to Jeff on the next peg, 8 minutes into the cast, tips nodded, nod, I'm into a fish, and obviously it's a decent fish. It's always great to get off the mark at Barston with a nice carp early on. And although it was a carp, it wasn't big by Barston standard. Still played it really carefully, took my time, didn't want to lose the first fish, no point rushing your first fish whatsoever, but £5 or £6 fish, really welcome. And obviously great to get off the mark with a decent carp. All that had been caught in that first sort of like half-hour period was skimmers. So with my carp, I'm still beating up the guys with like odd skimmer. You could tell that it wasn't going to be a great day today, especially in our little area. 124, Chris Hill on peg 124, he'd had a few fish. Peg 15 was catching really well, a long way away from us, but they're sort of chucking into like virgin water where no other anglers can get to, just behind the golf hole there. And in our little area, it was obvious that we weren't fishing for a qualification place anymore. And after an hour, I'd give up on qualifying. It was more about just maybe nicking a section. Because obviously there's a 10 peg section up for grabs. So start by obviously going a little bit further with your feeder, chucking a little bit further. So I peeled another 5 metres off the clip, another 5 metres. And just every time you do that, you catch another fish. But only skimmers, and you're talking sort of like £1.5, £2 maximum, some of these fish were. So they're not the carp that you want. Now, I had mixed up a little bit of ground bait before the match, and I thought if it is pretty pants, I can have a quick chuck short, see if there is any like decent skimmers about. So that's what I've done. Maybe halfway through, I've had a quick chuck short. Now that served two purposes. Firstly, I might have put a couple of fish in the net, as it was. I've put 2 decent skimmers in the net, a couple of little tiny those pellet peckers, those little 4 ounces, they were there as well. But I've put a few fish in the net doing it. But also, it's rested that area out there, my main catching area. And I think that's really important, just taking your feeder out of the water, taking your lines out of the water, just resting that area. Now, while I was doing that, Jeff Valance on the left-hand peg caught a couple of F1s. They were his first fish of the day, actually, probably like 2.5 hours into the match. You could tell how hard it was fishing in our little area. And that was obviously the cue for me to pick up the long rod again, chuck it out. This time I'm chucking at sort of like 60 metres, probably about 62 metres at this point. And I'd made the decision just to sit on it until it went. There was no like 10-minute chucks. It was just sit on that cast until it went, because it went in beautifully. I was actually stood up off my box because I feel that sometimes on a really long cast, when you're sitting on your box all day, you feel like you want to reel in all the time. You feel like sometimes you're a bit too busy. So because I was leaving it for a long time, stood up off my box. I was actually chatting to Jeff at the time, and the tip has absolutely towed round after about 12 minutes. You could tell it was a big fish straight away. It was nodding, it was slow. It's just classic big fish the way it was thought. It's kited to the left. Jeff Valance has had to reel in because it went over his line. And again, really took my time. You could just tell that this fish was probably going to win the section if I got it out. As it was, slipped the net under the fish. Jeff obviously Ringer's come up to have a look. He thought it was about £15. I think that was a bit over the top, probably about £12 or £13. Beautiful fish though, well worth taking my time with. And as it was, hip hip hooray, that won the section. Obviously nowhere near qualifying. I weighed in £26. I'm going to say 26 or £27. Can't quite remember. Chris Sellers won our zone off peg 124. He's had £68, but it was only a narrow victory because peg 15, he's had £67. Really close match that was. Even closer though was up in the 40s where the match was won. Peg 48 and 46, they've had a really close battle. £110 to £109. So ounces separating them for not only winning the match but also the main qualifying spot in the final. Third qualifier, can't quite, his name escaped me for the second, so what I'll do is I'll put his name there just so obviously so you guys know. All in all, really interesting day. I hope you enjoy this format. I think you can get far more information across than you can in a Facebook post or, you know, a written piece. So make sure you subscribe, and until next time, tight lines.